There's swords. There's all kinds of weirdness that I don't really understand. I just hide in the corner.
Welcome to the edge of nowhere. And welcome to this best intro ever to a Side Trail on the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Carr, here with my para-life partner, Mr. Matt O0, a.k.a. The Moz. How you holding up there, Moz?
We're still on para-life.
I'm going to use that in all the side trails.
How about SO? Like
SO?
Significant Otter. We just did Kustica. We can upgrade.
How about
it's kind of furry, and we only go so far on coffee and beer, so we are going to try to upgrade to methamphetamine so we can do longer episodes.
Yikes. Those episodes are going to be like 3 days long. Whoa. They'll be 3 days long, and they'll make absolutely no sense.
Well, is that different from the beginning?
Well, yeah, because right now they're only like an hour and a half long.
Yeah, but the
I'm not saying they make sense. Yeah. No, I'm not saying that.
Well, thank you.
I can deal with nonsense for a couple hours, but 3 days.
That's why he usually leaves after 2.
Yep. But so for this side trail, we have a couple extras that grew out of the Alma Fielding episode. We did tease them in the episode. You probably know what's coming, but first I would like to cover the topic of Sightless Vision.
Ooh.
As we mentioned. But as we discussed in the episode...
I am disgusted with that episode.
It was pretty disgusting.
Yep.
Alma suffered a bout of what they called sightless vision in the book. This occurred in 1929, so actually well before the major happenings of 1937 to 1938, breaking out in the Fielding residence. But to Alma, she was blind, but she managed to get around and perform her typical tasks well enough that it was hard to notice that she couldn't see. A little quote here. Alma told Fodor, quote, "I told nobody because I could walk about, ride my bicycle, and could carry on. I never had an accident. I cannot explain. It seemed...
She had a big accident with a bike in a wall.
Not while she was blind. She rides better when she's blind than when she can see, apparently.
Understood.
But continuing, it seemed to me as if a sense was given to me. I knew everything that was coming near me. I knew by the sound of the tram whether it was from London or from Thornton Heath, and I could get on the right one. I had a picture in my mind. I could play cards by the feel of the cards."
Mind the gap.
Remember that bit. I could play cards by the feel of the cards.
Yeah.
Let's continue on. We'll discuss in a little bit. Now, people may be wondering how this could possibly be. Was this just another of Alma's trickings? Not presumably so, actually, for this is far from unheard of in the medical field, this concept of sightless vision, as Alma called it, although it has since come to be known as Uncanny Sight. That term might be actually familiar to some people.
What we just talked about.
Let's read together an article from scientificamerican.com, the link for which you can find in the show notes. You want to lead us on this one, Moz?
Yes. So I'm starting with Uncanny Sight in the Blind?
Yep.
Uncanny Sight in the Blind. Some people who are blind because of brain damage have blind sight, an extraordinary ability to react to emotions on faces and even navigate around obstacles without knowing they can see anything. The video my colleagues and I shot is amazing. A blind man is making his way down a long corridor strewn with boxes, chairs, and other office paraphernalia. The man, known to the medical world as TN, has no idea the obstacles are there, and yet he avoids them all. Here's sidling carefully between a wastepaper basket and the wall. There, going around a camera tripod, all without knowing he has made any special maneuvers. TN may be blind, but he has blind sight, the remarkable ability to respond to what his eyes can detect without knowing he can see anything at all. TN's blindness is of an extremely rare type, caused by 2 strokes he suffered in 2003. The strokes injured an area at the back of his brain called the primary visual cortex, first on his left hemisphere and 5 weeks later on the right. His eyes remained perfectly healthy, but with his visual cortex no longer receiving the incoming signals, he became completely blind. This study of TN navigating along the hallway is probably the most dramatic demonstration of blind sight ever reported. Other patients who have lost vision because of damage to the primary visual cortex have exhibited less spectacular but equally mysterious cases of the phenomenon, responding to things they cannot consciously see, ranging from simple geometric shapes to the complex image of a person's face expressing an emotion. Scientists have also induced a similar effect in healthy people by temporarily switching off, quote-unquote, their visual cortex or by outfoxing it in other ways. As long ago as 1917, doctors reported cases like blind sight, then called residual vision, in soldiers injured in World War I. Half a century would pass, however, before more organized and objective research into the capacity began. The wider research community, however, initially greeted reports of human blind sight with great skepticism. Subjects with cortical blindness who can be studied are rare. The primary visual cortex is only a few centimeters across in adults, and brain damage is seldom restricted to just that area, knocking out the patient's vision yet leaving other faculties intact, enough for meaningful research on what the brain continues to perceive. Even so, it is now clear that many more patients with damage to the visual cortex have blind sight than scientists realized in the past, and skepticism has abated. That last sentence is not a surprise to me.
Yeah, right.
That's
well done. That was a long one, Moz. Thank you.
No.
Now, this article has a very scientific medical approach to the phenomena of uncanny vision. This would go nicely with the tale of Captain Gerald Lowry, who paid a visit to Nandor Fodor's IIPR in 1936.
He's also famous for the salt, right? Lowry salt?
I think different Lowrys.
Oh, okay.
So he was there a bit before the whole Alma Fielding saga began. Captain Lowry's optical nerve had supposedly been severed during combat in World War I. His eyes themselves were perfectly okay, but the wiring to the brain was kaput.
Kaput.
However, Captain Lowry still sailed his boat, he boxed, and he played golf as though there were nothing wrong with his vision. Captain Lowry claimed that he could see with his skin and that this vision would improve while wearing a kilt in the proper fashion. That is nothing underneath, right, by the way, rather than wearing pants. For one, I'm a big supporter of Captain Lowry's pro-kilt agenda. How about you, Moz?
Well, you know how we record these things.
I'm not wearing pants. Are you wearing pants?
We're not wearing pants.
But seriously, though, he claimed he could see with his skin.
Walker.
Now, I told you to remember, Alma said she could play cards. How? By the feel of the card.
Yeah,
was she seeing with her skin like Captain Lowry was talking about?
Yeah.
Meh?
Yeah.
Moz?
Yeah, you did say that. You did say that. Yep.
I just find it interesting that those two things connect so well.
I think it's... But I would just guess a different thing.
Sure. But back to the point, because it is a different thing, because Alma's case obviously wasn't the same as Captain Lowry's, or someone who was clinically blind had suffered, a severing of the visual cortex and all that. Alma's optic nerves were fine. She had suffered no more recent head injury or anything like that.
Alma got on my last optic nerve, let me tell you.
Something that did stand out as a clue to Dr. Fodor in this case, however, was that Alma's case of sighted blindness started on the anniversary of her child's death. This is something we didn't talk about in the episode. We're going to get a little morbid here. Little PSA trigger warning going forward. We do cover some rough topics in this. But as was common in those days, not all of Les and Alma's children had actually grown up like Donald. She had a miscarriage, and they had a child who died very young, like still as a baby. And Alma was never able to get over the loss. And it was on the anniversary of the child's passing that Alma's sight seemed to leave her. This led to Dr. Fodor.
Wait, can you say that again?
It was on the anniversary of the child's passing that I'll say it a little different, that Alma's bout of sightless vision started, that she supposedly went blind.
Interesting.
This led to Dr. Fodor establishing a theory. You want to read this quick passage from Kate Summerscale's book to explain it to us, Moss?
Fodor knew that both Captain Lowry and Alma might have been suffering from hysterical blindness, a conversion disorder in which suppressed feelings bypass conscious thought to express themselves directly through the body.
So there is the background on it, Moz. And I did warn you in the episode that I was going to pick your brain like a Hitchcockian bird for this one. Mm-hmm. The time has come. So what do you think of this so-called hysterical blindness concept of Fodor's?
Well, I mean, two things come to mind, and there's the hysterical blindness that is attention-seeking, and then there's one that, linked to the conversion disorder that's more of a real neurological disorder. And I think we talked about this a little bit somewhere. So,
we did get into it a little bit. I kind of told you to put a pin in it because we were going to do it in the side trail.
I thought I mentioned it somewhere that, people could see cars. There was studies done where people had a conversion disorder and they'd be like, or they had damage to their visual cortex and they couldn't see, but then they would say, no, you just have to choose between the two cards in front of you.
Right.
And they would always be right, even though they couldn't see.
Right, that's right. You did say that. You were talking about them testing them with the ESP cards, basically.
Well,
that they would use, like in Ghostbusters, the cards he was holding up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that people who were supposedly blind could still tell you what symbol was on the card.
Right, exactly.
That's very similar to what's going on with Alma and Captain Lowry here.
Yep, the salt guy.
If you insist, he's the salt guy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's really good on chicken. So, should I discuss any more later? Because we can keep going.
Well, we're gonna move on to the whole next section after this. So,
so we are.
Whatever you want to say about this, now's the time.
Neurological stuff. I'm going to say this a lot. I'm going to maybe do an episode on it, but the epileptic piece, the conversion disorder, the somatic piece, this damage, this bringing down, as we always talk about, from the shamanic point to like the bones and then back up, is a neuroplasticity moment. But the neurological problems are very common with people of mediums, people of power, people who think they're shamans, the epileptic disorder, the neurological disorder, the seizure disorder, the painless migraines, the hysterical blindness, all that is rolled up, conversion disorder, into shamanic-y shenanigans.
Yeah. What is a painless migraine? I'm not familiar with that term.
Well, you're having all these visual disturbances and you're not really having any pain in your brain, and other people have the headache without the visual disturbances, and it's the same,
Okay.
So but if you look, and again, I'd love to do an episode on this because I think there's a lot to it.
Well, we can leave it there then and save the rest for later.
Yeah. No, let's eat it all now. I'm kind of hungry.
Let's have our
He doesn't feed me for these things, and he stops me at 3 beers when we record. I'm going to say that now. I won't be put in a box.
They should be thanking me for that.
No,
if they knew what happened with that fourth beer.
We agreed.
Yeah.
We would not do.
Not
go over.
And you've kept to it very nicely. Thank you, Mom. Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the other main section of this side trail. This is basically the story of Dr. Nandor Fodor post the Alma Fielding investigation and his own final theories on Alma, which led to a whole new branch of thinking in the world of psychology, actually. Pretty interesting stuff. We glanced over this part in the episode. Now let's get into the details of how things unraveled for Fodor after the Alma X-ray incident at the IIPA.
Thought experiment. What if you take an X-ray of an X-ray machine?
You will see all its parts.
Wow. I mean, does that confuse the X-ray? Is there something philosophical happening more than that? It seems deep to me.
Nope.
Moving on.
I'm not giving you that one, Maz. I'm sorry. I got to say no sometimes.
All right.
But so after Alma was exposed, the Countess demanded that Dr. Fodor suspend all future seances. This is why things got canceled real quick.
This happened to MLT one time, too. It was terrible.
Yeah. And if you haven't heard the episode, you got to go back and listen because this is straight up picking up where the episode left off. But Fodor had suggested that they could inject Alma with a form of truth serum to suss out the truth from her, a suggestion that the Countess found appalling. Because, he wasn't even really that kind of doctor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those things were not.
He did play doctor with Alma, though.
Yeah, he
like.
totally did. He definitely stepped over some professional boundaries in this case, no doubt. But it took no more than a week for the Countess to call a meeting of the IIPR staff with the purposeful exception of Dr. Fodor to deride Dr. Fodor to all of his cohorts. She spoke of his desire to drug Alma, to steal the crown jewels. See, that comes back to bite him. In his, quote, unregulated use of psychoanalytical techniques, unquote, in his sessions with Alma. And there you go. He was playing professional psychiatrist, psychologist, or whatever with Alma, and he did not have those credentials. He was not that kind of doctor.
Okay.
He was hypnotizing.
So
he was hypnotizing her and things, like doing weird stuff that he was not. He met a hypnotist. He got one lesson on how to hypnotize people and then started using it on Alma like he was a real doctor. Mm-hmm. He definitely overstepped some bounds with this one.
Gotcha.
And it got him in trouble. But it was at this very meeting of the IIPR Council that they decided to cancel all of Dr. Fodor's investigations and fundings. Yep. They basically just sacked him right there.
Yeah, I remember this a little bit.
But they weren't nearly as quick in delivering the news to Dr. Fodor as they were in making this decision. It was weeks later when Dr. Fodor was returning from holiday. He was in town when they made the decision. They hesitated on telling him. Then he went on a holiday thinking he still would have a job when he got back, and he did not.
We've all been there. Yep.
It was when he got back from the holiday that he was given notice of his sacking by the IIPR. At this point, Dr. Fodor had written over 5,000 words of his official report on the Alma Fielding case.
Did we lose that to time in the fog of time?
But, hold on. Well, we'll get there. Don't worry. But when he went to the Institute to collect it, along with all his other things, he found the locked drawer of his desk had been picked and the transcript was missing.
Wow. This is pre...
yeah, this being the 1930s,
cloud.
There were no other copies. And the Institute was in possession of all his physical records for the case, photographs and notes from the investigation in the house and whatnot. The council was so worried about the possible implications of Dr. Fodor's publishing his Alma Fielding thesis. They were worried he wouldn't change their names. They didn't want to be mentioned in conjunction with this at all because it turned into such a farce. So they were basically doing their best at this point to keep him from being able to write it and release it. And to make things worse, when Fodor reached out to Alma to offer her assistance in the form of further investigation and a program of psychoanalysis, this time from an actual professional, Alma just went all millennial on him and never even replied to his inquiries. She just ghosted him.
Are you just generationally abusing people now?
Yes.
Wow.
Come on, we all know the millennial thing where you say, hey, you coming out tonight? And they just never respond.
Okay, boomer.
We all know that's a thing. Mm-hmm. Gen X, dude. Gen X.
Yeah, both of us. But I was insulting you with the okay, boomer.
I'm too feral for people to be able to argue with me on generational stuff because I'm Gen X.
We're both Gen X, for the record.
For the record.
We are going to come out with a record soon.
But anywho, so Alma totally ghosts him. And this was in the summer of 1938, mere months after the original newspaper article was printed in February. Like, this all happened really fast.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does that transcript, does he have, and did he reproduce it? Is there anything left, or was it gone?
Let me tell my story, Moz.
Sorry. I can't.
I will give you a hint.
Okay.
There is a happy ending for the story.
Well,
okay.
Good. Okay.
But the final word we have from Alma comes from a random encounter on the street with the reporter Jack from the Croydon Advertiser. He was the one that was there. Him and the photographer were there playing darts.
The unnamed photographer.
When the wardrobe jumped across the bedroom and all that.
Yeah.
Jack reported that Alma looked to have improved noticeably, looking healthier of complexion and back to normal weight. So that's good, because she was getting really haggard by the time she stopped going to the IIPR and all that. But she told Jack that the spirits had not relented and that her collection of broken tumblers and stolen trinkets continued to build.
Mm.
But this was not the end for Dr. Fodor. He wrote his Alma Fielding thesis, which included his overall theory on the case, fusing together the paranormal and the psychoanalytical.
Nice.
Through his sessions with Alma, he had come to believe that she had been, and little trigger warning here again, but he had come to believe that she had been sexually abused as a child. The prime suspect for this was her uncle, who had been in charge of her training to be a circus performer as a young girl. The horror and suppression of this abuse, Fodor believed, led to Alma developing a dissociative disorder.
Oh, I left that one out. That's also tied into this.
Yeah. Which in turn led her to a psychical breakdown in all the poltergeist and other crazy happenings throughout her case. This theory was actually supported by the Countess herself prior to everything coming apart. Can you read this passage from Kate Summerscale's book for us, please, Moz?
Elizabeth Severn,
who was the Countess,
said that she felt sure that Alma had been assaulted as a girl. She believed that Alma's vision of the man with an evil face was a memory fused with her wish to see... Is this the long-faced man?
Yes, I believe that's who she's referring to, yeah.
Fused with her wish to see her assailant hanged for his crime. In cases of violent dissociation, she said, there was almost always a sexual trauma in the background.
So it brings us back to something you talked about in the episode before I told you to save it for the side trail. The Freudian versus Jungian perspective of whether or not these things that can most definitely manifest in dangerous and even outwardly violent ways.
For MLT people, this means Carl Jung. Means Bob Dylan versus Neil Jungian.
Right. But it's a perspective of whether or not these things can manifest not just in the body, but outside the body, and become something like a poltergeisty sort of force. So, okay, now that I've laid it all out, I would love to get your perspective on this stuff, Moz. The closest thing we do have to an expert here. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm an expert because we won't be Bert or Squidward.
Right, but what are your thoughts on how dissociative disorder could apply in the Alma Fielding case? And are you a Freudian or a Jungian, a Dillian or a Jungian?
I think I've established I'm a Neil Jungian.
There you go.
But in music, I'm a Bob Dylan. So
Ooh,
that's my yin and yang. Yeah.
Conflict.
It's my music. My right brain is one, my left brain is the other.
But the dissociative disorder
fits right in. I could have mentioned that in my little diatribe earlier. It fits right in with all that stuff. Dissociative disorders are also a piece of this, hysterical blindness. You're kind of parts of your brain. The visual cortex is working. The visual cortex is not working. The eyes are. But your brain is still perceiving a bunch of stuff. There's a dissociation that's happening there as well.
Right.
More of a conversion disorder is what they were saying. But dissociative is again, if you have someone who has powers, you're dealing with the same. That could have been added to that list that I said earlier of epilepsy, of Parkinsonian kind of. Well, Parkinsonian is more. Never mind. Take that one out.
But specifically, what are your thoughts on, like, in the Moz brain,
which doesn't function
Do
at all.
you think this connection between dissociative disorder and the actual outward physical manifestation of like throwing things across the room, making things appear and disappear, does that make sense to you? Does that hold weight?
Well, again, we talked about multiple personality, which we said we believe in somewhere in the future or the past.
Yeah. That's in the next episode that we already recorded. We're jumping timelines again. We confuse the crap out of ourselves.
Here we go again on our own. But yeah, I think dissociation is exactly what we're talking about when, if you just want to take a shamanic standpoint, lying in state sleeping and then the astral double's out doing something else.
Right.
There's a variation of that theme.
Right.
You're dissociating. You're not really connecting to what's happening to, another part of your brain is doing something else. And
okay, so practical example from our Alma Fielding story here. The supposed astral projection sort teleportation thing when she was in the cinema and then all of a sudden she's at the IIPR.
Right.
Could it be that in her mind that really happened that way? She was in the cinema 1 second, next second she's out standing under that light at the police station, and then boom, back in the cinema. But did she maybe actually go through the motions of physically going there and she just doesn't remember doing that because she was the other Alma in that point?
From a psychological perspective, I would say that when we talk about hypnopompic and hypnagogic and parasomnias, that is also associated with dissociative stuff, with epilepsy, with neurological misfirings of the brain. So that's why, these folks have tremors, these folks have twitches, these folks have muscular stuff. There's a somatic component, again, where you might be compensating for things that aren't firing by listening to other parts of your brain. There's a dissociative piece where you might be listening to other parts of your brain and not listening to other parts of your brain. And it is very, at the end of the day, to sum it up, it's neurological. These all kind of smell of a neurological disorder where they seem to have other insights into things that are going on that other people might not. Shaman adjacent folks or mediums or shamans all tend to have.
It's almost like wires in your brain getting crossed up and suddenly you're perceiving reality in a different way.
Right, and all these things are also linked to anxiety. So, she had this very anxious period that pushes you into a dissociative state, that pushes into all these other things that are happening, and spills out all these medical conditions that are happening, kind of domino effect, where it just kind of creates cascades into all these other areas.
Yeah, I mean, it puts another angle on it where, she was actually manifesting she thought all this stuff was outside of herself, but it was actually her manifesting it from inside herself without even knowing it.
She's not the best example because, again, the shaman gets caught with the blood and the pieces of bits of animal that they're using as their trickery piece. Right. But that's part of their shtick. She's the circus performer, and she's doing some of these other things. Maybe she felt like this was not something she can control, but she liked the attention, so she wanted to take it that next step.
Exactly. So
she's like, I'm... But how would she be like... I don't understand where she would be like, well, I want to keep this going, so now I'm going to be masterful of doing all these little tricks. It almost seems like she was doing that all along, and then it was just a trick.
Right. You don't learn that kind of sleight of hand and illusion magic overnight. You don't just suddenly decide, okay, I'm a magician now.
Yeah. Well, again, if you're that powerful of a critter, you could probably do multiple skills, and I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe it is if you just have that awakening, so to speak.
But you also know she's being, there's an investigation going on about her, and she should have just kept to the facts if something was actually going on.
True.
She should have known at some point.
She definitely got caught up in the glamour,
the moment,
and
she
the
loved
excitement.
The attention.
Yeah,
and
but it caused her a lot of stress, like emotional, physical, and mental stress.
The medical stuff that was going on with her, the psychological stuff was going on with her, all fits these other. The hysterical blindness could definitely be something, especially because she didn't attention seek. She didn't tell anybody. This
Right.
is something that came out later.
She was trying to hide it. Yeah.
Right.
She was like embarrassed by it.
Right. So in some ways, that part of it is potentially is more true.
I didn't cover the specific story of it, but it ends up that Les, her husband, starts catching on, and like, you know, at one point he like goes, he doesn't say anything. He just like goes to hand her a cup of tea without telling her he's handing her a cup of tea, and she's just sitting there. And then he does the whole wave the hand in front of the face kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's not reacting. He's like, "You're blind."
Yeah.
She's like, no, not me.
Yeah.
But she ends up having to admit it. And the way it ends is she like, she literally like walks into a door, bumps her head, and oh, now I can see again. Mm-hmm. It's weird.
Yeah.
It really is a good book. Anyone interested in this story should totally read Kate Summerscale's book. Like, there's so much in there I couldn't even get to in this.
Yeah. You
It's
wanted to do
very
like 7
interesting.
episodes, and we're like
I was tempted to make it 2.
Jeremy.
I was tempted, but it was an episode and a half was the problem. So it's a long episode, long Side Trail.
Now it's a Moz episode. That's all.
It is a Moz length episode.
We
Yes.
fight to keep it under 2 hours.
But all right, so now that we've got Dr. Fodor's theory all worked out there, let's get on with the rest of his story and see where this all ended up. Because Dr. Fodor was not easily deterred after all these troubles. After the flagrant violations of his process committed by the Institute, he had done so much to build. He was tenacious enough to get his book on the Fielding case written with an in-depth reckoning on his theories and their implications on the field of psychoanalysis. But once the book was written, Fodor had no idea what to do with it. There was no one in his old paranormalist circles that would touch the thing, and he lacked any real connections in the world of psychoanalysis. What was particularly frustrating was that Sigmund Freud himself, at the peak of his popularity, was actually staying in London at the time. He was in the area. Fodor spent many an hour fretting over how, if he could just get Dr. Freud to look at his book, that he knows it would be his big break. But there was no way that a man of Dr. Freud's stature would see a man like Dr. Fodor, especially after all the recent ruckus, you know? So, woe was me, Fodor opined. Woe is me. Woe is me, Moz.
What if he
I'm paraphrasing him there.
If he snuck the transcript of the book to him, would it be a Freudian slip?
Oh. We're going to use that joke in a minute.
cracked myself
Hold on,
up.
we're going to use that joke in a minute. But Dr. Fodor did still have one influential figure on his side. One day, after too many days of Fodor's paraphrased opining, woe is me, Irene Fodor, wife of the good doctor, walked confidently to the door of Dr. Freud's residence carrying a fresh bouquet of tiger lilies. She was there to basically welcome Dr. Freud on behalf of all the women of London. Mm-hmm. That was her excuse for going to his door. And Dr. Fodor watched from a safe distance as the door opened and Irene was invited inside. Dr. Fodor suffered what I'm sure felt like an eternity, but was really less than an hour, until Irene emerged back out of the forbidden door.
Flustered with her hair all...
Oh, God, he must have been a wreck. Like he was chain smoking.
I meant
cigarettes.
her. She came out a little, Yeah.
Oh yeah, little flustered herself. Oh, come on.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Yeah.
Sigmund's wife was home. Come on.
Yeah.
But it turned out that when faced with a beautiful woman bearing flowers, Dr. Freud was a most agreeable man. Mm-hmm. So agreeable, in fact, that he had agreed to read Irene's husband's book on the Alma Fielding case. The manuscript was delivered to Dr. Freud's residence post-haste. Then on 22 November 1938, Dr. Fodor received a reply from Dr. Freud. Upon completing his reading of Dr. Fodor's book, he actually read the whole thing. Moz will now read us a passage from that reply letter from Dr. Freud. Won't you, Moz?
I found myself richly rewarded. Your attempt to turn the interest from the question of whether the observed phenomena were genuine or fraudulent, your efforts to study the medium psychologically and to uncover her previous history seemed to me to be the right steps. It is very regrettable that the IIPR would not follow you, I also hold it very probable that your conclusions regarding this case are correct. It would be desirable to confirm them by a real analysis of the party. This apparently cannot be done. This is what I wanted. And I said this to you. I don't know if it was, I never know if it was on mic or off because sadly we keep talking. But I wanted an actual, if we could have done a psychological evaluation of Alma Fielding, we would have a lot more details of whether this was,
Yeah, the problem is with the way it all went down, it just kind of went so bad so fast that she ghosted all of them and just wouldn't be a part of anything they were doing anymore. She disappeared into the ether, so to speak.
Yeah.
And into the war, because the war started right after all this went down.
And to her credit, she was a nurse. She went on. She did her thing.
She did her volunteer nursing during the war. And,
Yep.
So, but he did like it, Maz. Freud actually liked Fodor's thesis on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Freud's still a skeptic, but softening on his views of manifestation and whatnot, encouraged Dr. Fodor to push for publication and allowed him to use Dr. Freud's review letter as a reference. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
This was actually really huge for Fodor in his book. A personal reference from the Dr. Freud in that day was like a free pass into the world of psychoanalytics,
Yeah, I agree.
So at this point, Fodor made a point of wrapping up all his unfinished business, and by early 1939, he was ready to move on, which was a great thing for him because on 15 March 1939, Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia.
He's like that.
The war was on.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, on St. Patrick's Day, 1939, Nandor Fodor and his family set sail for the New World to start a new life in the shadows of Lady Liberty in New York City.
Dang.
How's that?
And that's when he becomes Simon Pegg.
He got out of there right in time, dude.
Yeah.
Like during the war, where him and his family were living got like decimated. But once in the New World, Dr. Fodor began his foray into the world of psychoanalysis. And it was quite the foray indeed. To give you an idea of how it all went, let's have Maz read us a paragraph of Dr. Nandor Fodor's Wikipedia page. Maz?
So this is Nandor Fodor's. I didn't know Fodor had a Wikipedia page.
It's extensive.
It's his.
Yeah, he has a page.
Oh, no, this is just Wikipedia, not his.
Wikipedia.
Yeah.
The story of Nandor. He didn't write it.
I thought he invented Wikipedia.
He was dead before the internet. I'm sorry to tell you.
I understand. I'm sorry. We'll cut that out.
But read to us about Mr. Fodor here.
Fodor was one of the leading authorities on poltergeists, hauntings, and paranormal phenomena, usually associated with mediumship. Fodor, who was at one time Sigmund Freud's associate, wrote on subjects like prenatal development and dream interpretation, but is credited mostly for his magnum opus, Encyclopedia of Psychic Science, first published in 1934. Fodor was the London correspondent for the American Society of Psychical Research, 1935 to 1939. He worked as an editor for the Psychoanalytical Review and was a member of the New York Academy of Sciences.
So you can see he was quite the success in the world of psychoanalytics. He even actually ended up directly working for Sigmund Freud there for a while, as that noted.
Nice.
Which proved to be much more lucrative than his work in the paranormal had ever been.
No, there's a shock.
Yeah, surprising, right? We know how much paranormalists make, don't we, Maz?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's a negative number. Not only did Dr. Fodor regain the societal and professional standing he had lost before the Alma Fielding case, but he had greatly surpassed any level of status he had previously attained. So in the end, he made out. And finally, once again proving his unending tenacity, Dr. Fodor, you ready, Maz?
I'm ready.
Dr. Fodor was able to get his book titled On the Trail of the Poltergeist, published by Citadel Press in New York City in the year 1958.
Woo.
The names and particulars were changed to protect both the innocent and the guilty, and mostly to protect Dr. Fodor from any future lawsuits. But this book was undoubtedly the full story of the Alma Fielding case, finally published after 20 years. It took him 20 years, but he did it. And it is to that work in particular that we owe the existence of this episode. So I say to you, Dr. Nandor Fodor, mad kujos, sir. Mad kujos.
Ah, down boy!
All right, that does it for me, Moz.
But did Kate Summerscale use any of that in the book, The Haunting of Emma Fielding?
If he had not written that book, no other books on it would exist, because that's the record. So I would have to imagine that she got a hold of that.
Okay.
Like, where else does this all come from?
Yeah. All right. Cool.
I haven't looked to see if that book is actually readily available in print. That would actually be an interesting thing to look up. But
well, I would like to add an Ahu Guano file.
Oh, boy. All right. You're always doing this to me. Ahu Guano Side Trail Theory of the Week. How about that? Oh, no. Here it comes. Quick. To the batshit signal.
I totally just made you do that, and I don't have one.
I'm still going to put the bumper in there.
I know.
So you're sitting there thinking I'm going to edit this out.
You think you won this round. You didn't. You lost.
We'll see about that, Moz.
Okay. I got nothing, and you just played it.
Nice. And we are far enough off the rails to end the side trail now. Thank you very much, Moz. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
I won that one.
Hit all the happy fun buttons. Check out our Patreon. Only $1 a month.
Made him look dumb.
Early access to all the episodes and side trails. The side trails come out at the same time as the episodes in the Patreon. So for just $1 a month, you can kind of keep on a narrower path with us and get ahead of the crowd. We will see you next week with the Doppleganger.
I'm giving Mad Cujos to Nelson right now.
Mad Cujos, Nelson. Mad Cujos.
Damn boy!
We'll see you next week. Until then, keep it weird. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this 27th Side Trail edition of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here with my co-host and para-life partner. Oh, I haven't used that one since like episode 2. Matt O0, a.k.a. the Moz. How we doing today, Moz?
Para-life partner.
I just remembered that. I used that like a long time ago.
I know. It's okay. It's all good.
It's accurate.
Yeah,
it's accurate.
Yes, it is.
Because in all things paranormal, you are my life partner.
Yeah, and if you
thankfully, it doesn't go beyond that.
And if you do move in, it could be kind of a different interdimensional, and there's lots of space depending on how you do this.
Yeah. I'm already living rent free inside your head. So that's all
wow.
I really need.
Dang, man. It's gets dark quick in these dark podcasts we do.
But anywho, we are here for the side trail for our Doppleganger episode.
Yeah.
Should I tell them how we're slipping timelines and we're recording the side trail before the episode?
I was going to say I loved Doppleganger. I thought it was like the quickest episode we ever did.
Oh, by far the easiest one to do before the side trail.
Zero editing as well.
Yeah.
So it'd be perfect.
It's like it doesn't even exist yet.
Yep. So no, we're jumping timelines and we're doing that tomorrow. So we're doing the side trail first.
Yeah. Because I'm a slacker and I didn't have my Alma Fielding side trail ready. And Moz was like, well, my side trail for the next one's just a story.
My
so
next
we're gonna get
17 side trails are ready, sir.
Yeah, you're an overachiever, Moz.
I love this stuff. And I just, we did have a year head start.
Like
and
2 year head start.
We started talking about it but really a year of prep. And I read a lot of books and I started my episodes.
Right,
and,
right.
That's part of the reason I can have 47 references for some.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll be doing that a year and a half from now. We will see.
I'm not sure that's even an exaggeration, 47 references.
Well, maybe, but not much.
Not by much for some of your episodes. For a couple of them anyway.
Yeah, it's true. So, but no, tonight I was very excited about the side trail for this one because I actually get to tell a doppelganger story. Nice. And it's one of just my favorite stories to tell. It's up there in my list of crazy, weird, slipping timelines into kind of a cartoony moment in my life. And this was a night that didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
It's going to sound embellished. It's going to sound cliche. It's going to sound strange. But you have spoken to 2 other people that were at that table tonight of the about 7 or 8 people that were there.
Yeah.
And they can attest to the variety.
I do know what story to which you're referring, and I believe it was the first time I heard it. it was told to me by you and 2 other people simultaneously, all agreeing on everything. Right. So I'm pretty sure it's accurate.
Yeah. And it was again, we talked about it when I decided to do the Doppleganger episode. I said, I have a story.
Yeah.
I have a Doppleganger
it's perfect.
story.
This is great.
But then something happened. It happened to me.
So, I'm not going to give any of the details because this is still, it involved me and a John Cusack doppelganger and a police department. And I'm not giving any more details about the where, when, why, how, what.
That's probably a good idea.
Statute of limitations? No idea.
The only real name we'll use is John Cusack.
Correct.
It's just his doppelganger, so it's not even his real name.
His doppelganger. It's actually a doppeljohner, if you think about it.
Cusack ganger.
Cusack ganger or a doppeljohner? Doppeljohner.
Doppeljohner's actually got a really nice ring to it.
Yeah. So we do have a dead ringer for John. And I've said this to you before.
No, dead ringers was Jeremy Irons, I think.
Ah, very good. Nice.
I pulled a Moz on you right there.
Very well done, sir. But this is I've never seen anyone look more like someone else than this gentleman. I would say he looked like John Cusack 8 or 10 years earlier, so he was a younger version. And other than that...
Wait, when did this actually take place?
I have no idea. Somewhere between now and the past. I'm not saying
it was
state.
kind of a I'm
not saying the bar.
What decade did it happen in?
I'm not saying that.
Oh, you're not even going. It was a long time ago. This isn't recent.
I'll say this
because I don't want them thinking
it happened a long time ago in a drinking establishment far, far away.
But John Cusack was famous at this point.
Correct.
So that narrows it down a little bit.
Yes, okay. It is in fact somewhere between John Cusack's career beginning and today.
There you go.
And that helps.
And it was a while ago. We'll just say that. It was a while ago.
Yeah. So the story begins with a group of my friends going into a drinking establishment. Many of my stories do start this way.
Pretty much all of the ones I've heard.
And I would say there was somewhere between 6 or 8 people. We had a couple of tables kind of pushed together. Really cool place. And it was a night of drinking. Like, it was just a night that the pitchers keep coming to the table and we're having a good time and everything seems to be larger than life, and it's just folks I hadn't seen in a while, and it was just a lot of fun.
Just the really cool, crazy vibes going on.
Cool, crazy vibes going all night long. And in the middle of all of this, in walks John Cusack with a bodyguard, and the whole place is just stunned, and everybody's like, what the heck is going on? And
like full on thinking John Cusack just walked in.
Correct. And as you look, the only thing I could think of is maybe this person is younger than John Cusack. That was my only clue that this wasn't John Cusack.
Like his younger brother or something.
Yeah, like Sherlock Holmes' smarter brother. It's kind of that thing.
Right.
So he comes around to the tables, and it was basically a bouncer behind him, and people are buying him drinks, and everyone's talking. He's living the life because he's a dead ringer for John Cusack. He is a doppelganger. He is the most doppelgangery thing I've ever experienced in my life.
At least he was lucky enough to look like John Cusack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could have been much worse,
Could have looked like Danny DeVito or something.
Danny DeVito's.
Not that would be bad, but you know what I'm saying.
The penguin. That's the. But yeah, it was a moment where he went table to table, and we got to know him a little bit because he went table to table. He was doing the show, people buying him drinks. He's doing the whole.
Oh, he was really playing into it.
Oh, he had a bodyguard. There's a guy standing behind him and people buying him drinks, and he's talking table to table, and everybody's, at some point you realize this is not him. This is a shtick, but it's still.
Was he like letting people take pictures with him?
Oh, yeah. It was totally, you're at Great Adventure, and he's going to hand you a stuffed animal if you win the prize. It was.
That's funny.
But he's living the life. He's living large. And, at the end of, I would say a couple hours more of drinking, he's still there. And he started to gravitate towards our table. There was a couple of tables in the back. It's starting to not as, it was still crowded, but we're now getting into like the 11 range. So he started to frequent our table a little more, like these are the people I actually want to hang out and talk with. So we're starting to talk to John a little bit, get to know him a little bit. I don't know his real name. I'm going to call him just,
Yeah,
Doppelganger.
Doppeljohn is fine.
And I actually tried to look up this guy on Google because he looks so much like John Cusack. I thought he had a following or something, but I could not find him.
Yeah, and the way it's like he's almost doing public appearance work kind of stuff off of it. You'd think he'd maybe advertise. He could come to your party and play John Cusack.
It is an old story, and that might be why he doesn't have quite that resonance.
True.
As you might expect. But, all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. And this is at the far end of the bar. It's kind of an L-shaped thing. We're in the back, and there's a L-shaped bar, and then there's more seating towards the windows. And there's like 3 entrances, I remember. We're near the back entrance, and there's kind of 2 in the front. And near the end of the bar, near the windows, near the front, all of a sudden there's this frenetic explosion of a fight breaks out.
Whoa.
And it lasted seconds. It was like over in 20 seconds max. Not even, it may have been 10. But because so many glasses were flying, and it was almost like an Alma Fielding moment.
Yeah, very poltergeisty.
It was very poltergeisty. I don't know who was throwing what, but it was dangerous situation. There were things flinging with full drinks thrown at people, and it was just this, all of a sudden.
You say it was the other side. Was it like a good portion of the bar, or was it very contained?
Very contained to just this.
So just
I'm
this
in the
one
back
little group.
corner, and I'm looking out towards the main part of the bar. I'm in a dark little corner with my group, the Antisocial Club, in the back, and we're looking out past the rest of the bar towards the windows.
And over in the far corner, hell breaks loose.
And all hell breaks loose, just before you kind of break open past the bar to where there's some seating by the windows. It's near the front of the establishment.
Okay.
But I didn't really get a good look. I actually had to turn around and just saw all this commotion for 10, 15 seconds. And it's over. It's over. I don't know what happened, but after that, there was literally nothing. Like, there was no... I don't think the bartender had time to react and get out there. There wasn't a scuffle beyond that. It was more but it was so violent that it was a moment, like in a bar. I've been in some bad moments in bars, but that was very frenetic. I'll just say that. But it was over, and whatever had happened had ended as quickly as it did, and that was it. Everyone went on to talking, and nothing else happened. I believe the perpetrators left. I have no idea.
Right.
But we just go about drinking, and John's starting to hang out with us more, so we're getting to know him, and he's actually at our table. And then all of a sudden, I would say now we're getting near the 11:30 mark in the night, and I would say 45 minutes to an hour has gone by since this frenetic fight that ended immediately and the people left. Like 45 minutes.
Like forgotten about it.
Actually, within 10 seconds, nothing happened after that. I didn't even know who was arguing.
Right. There was no one left bleeding on the floor. There was
there was no aftermath. I don't know where the people went. It was over so quick. They threw things at each other and left.
It was like a what the
hell was that? It could have been a domestic violence. Like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Right, okay.
It's gone. No one's talking about it. 1 hour later, all of a sudden, I see, because now I'm in a different seat, I'm looking towards the front, I see 2 police officers come to either front entrances. At the same time,
they're flanking it, so they don't want anybody to leave.
Right. And now I'm sitting in the back with our table, and we're hanging out with, John Cusack, who had just left, by the way.
John Cusack just left?
He had just wandered out for a cigarette.
Okay.
So I look over, and I see... next to me, also now, the third entrance, this man steps in from behind. A cliche, absolutely dressed like a 40s detective with the trench coat and the hat and the long tie.
Wow.
This isn't that old of a story. It wasn't
it's not
the 40s.
At all that old of a story.
I mean, you can just tell by John Cusack's career.
Right. The fact that John Cusack was famous, nobody was dressing like that no more.
This was a cliche detective. And he steps in.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, see, man. A wise guy. He steps in, a hush falls on the crowd, and I'm thinking, this is a dumb, I'm hanging out with John Cusack, now there's a detective here, this whole night is just absurd. My trickster in me just absolutely kicks in.
Oh, no.
So what I do is
This is why we don't let Maz in public anymore.
This is why. Yeah, one of my friends broke up with me after this. My friend wouldn't hang out with me. It's like after our 3 last times we went out, this was the last straw. So, and he's right. I'm not going to I mean, they were events. So I only saw him when I was back in this area, and he was like, last 3 times we hung out, like, no,
I can't do this
can't
anymore.
do this anymore. And it was like a bromance breakup
That's
email.
sad. That's sad.
We had email back then. There's your other hint. So what I do is I couldn't help it, and it was a compulsion. And if any of you have played parts of the trickster, and I have for big parts of my life where I'm thrust into the trickster role, I couldn't help this.
I feel you
And
in that.
it was just a moment like, this is so dumb, and this is such a weird night, and this is such a weird vibe. I have to do something to make this all even more ridiculous. So I went.
You need the situation to reach its full potential.
Correct. Because this is all the elements are there now.
Yeah, it's too good to pass up.
So I do the psst, psst, and I cup my hand, and I say, it was the guy who looked like John Cusack. If you could see Jeremy's eye. Yeah, I know. It's an no trickster moment. Now, John
it's been a while since I heard this.
had just gone out to smoke a cigarette. So,
dude,
listen to this. This is what happens next. No exaggeration. The overly cliche detective goes, 2 snaps, police disappear. I turn back. He's gone. All 3 of them disappeared.
They all went back out
they
their
knew
respective
exactly
doors.
what I was talking about, because John Cusack's sitting out by the car smoking. And they said, that guy looks like John Cusack.
They saw him on the way in.
Oh, I'm sure. There's like the only thing they saw was, what the hell is John Cusack doing here? So that's the only one they could, that's the only thing I could say that would be just totally ridiculous.
Right.
John Cusack doesn't come back in from his smoke break.
Oh, no.
So we're all sitting around, and his bouncer finally leaves. The guy who was his bodyguard, finally gives up on him. He disappears.
Wait. How much is he paying this bodyguard that he doesn't go outside with him for a smoke break?
I'll be honest. This is the one part of the story I don't know where the bodyguard disappeared. If he went out with him and then disappeared. If he disappeared after.
Okay.
I don't know if they were together.
Not that he could do anything about it if the cops wanted to arrest somebody.
Yeah.
But
I just know he's gone now.
Okay, I got you.
He doesn't come back in. I thought he stayed longer, but I honestly, that's lost to the fog of time. Another hour drinking goes by. We order a couple more pitchers for the table. We thought we would never know the end of this story. This was just a very strange night with very strange events, and these things happen in my life, and we'll never know, So we stay and order pitchers. Now we're like a gazillion pitchers in. This group of 8 people have had a lot of pitchers. We're now talking more like 1 a.m. Very different crowd an hour later.
A good couple hours go by since the cops disappeared along with John Cusack.
Well, if I had to guess, there was a
me.
fight, and I would say 45 minutes to an hour before they showed.
Right.
And then it was another hour at least.
Then another hour.
An hour and a half.
Okay.
Before the event reaches its culmination.
Okay.
So we're there now. There's much less people in the bar. It's it's just a few of us there. It's kind of scattered. You're at the 1 o'clock range. I wouldn't be able to guess, but I'd say there's only 20 people in the bar now. It was a packed bar maybe an hour or 2 earlier. Maybe only 20 people left in the whole place. John Cusack comes back in.
He comes back.
Hair all messed up, and he's a little pale. And we're like, John, what's going on? What's going on? Sit down. We slide him a beer. We get him a fresh glass. We slide him a beer. He goes, I just got interrogated by the beep, 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 police department. And I'm like, so everyone knows this happened because everybody was there, and everybody was really, had the same reaction you did. Like, why did you do that? That was not,
Seriously, why did you do that?
Because tricksters do these things.
You just can't help it.
It's a compulsion.
Why did Alma sneak in the trinkets, man?
Yeah, I snuck in the trinkets, and the X-ray machine shows up. So we hear his whole sordid tale about being interrogated and what happened, and it was horrible, and he doesn't know why, and he's confused. And
why did this happen to me?
And he's drinking the beer, and basically we're just trying to be like as nice as we can to him and make sure he's okay. And then when he gets up to go talk to somebody, I go, I got to tell him what happened.
Dude.
The whole
Don't do that.
2 tables that are left for my group is all still there to my recollection. I don't think anybody had left. 6 to 8 other people are saying, absolutely not. You are not telling what happened. We don't know where his bodyguard is. He could come back. Like, he could fight you. Like, he's going to shoot you. You're not going to do this. So I agree. Like, sort of like, yeah, sure. Okay. John comes back. We're drinking the beer. And then everybody's waiting for it. Everybody's like, he's going to tell them.
They could feel you.
Feel the energy coming. So I'm like, John, I got to tell you something. So I tell him the story I just told you. Word for word.
Straight up
told you the exact story.
Wow.
And then I said, it was John Kim. And he just looked at me and goes, that's funny. He said, okay.
Oh no.
Not, but
I like this guy. But I like this guy. The fact that he can take that in stride and appreciate the humor of it, that's
course.
Actually great.
He gets mad Cujos for this story.
Oh, total mad Cujos for Doppleganger. Down boy.
But like,
too
if
funny.
it went south, I have a story about I got beat up by John Cusack. Like, there was no bad ending to this story in a way.
Like, and that was it? You didn't even talk about it anymore? Like, did he keep hanging out? Did you have more drinks?
I would actually, 2 other people at that table. I don't think we hung out that much longer after that.
He probably finished his drink and was like, all right, I got to get out of here before this guy gets another joke in his head.
I don't think he hung out with us that much longer. We didn't become like buddies and pen pals.
And like, you don't even know who they were looking for and why. Like, it may have not even had anything to do with that fight.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was a bad, dangerous moment at the bar. It's just they showed up so late, which I thought was ridiculous. They would dress like we had a detective from the 40s there. The whole thing was just
when you take an hour to show up, the people aren't there anymore,
no.
dude. They're never going to actually be there anymore. Because when something like that happens, whoever's left standing leaves.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
No, it was they left immediately.
Yeah, that's what you do. I've been in situations like that. You leave as soon as it's over.
And for me, it just culminated in this. We're drinking. It's silly. Everything seemed so ridiculous. Everything seemed just silly. And I couldn't resist.
That's too much.
Tying it all into a nice bow.
It even had a punchline.
And it had a punchline.
And the punchline is, that's funny. That's fantastic. The fact that he comes back, keeps hanging out. You tell him the exact story and how you are to blame for all of his troubles. And his reaction is, yeah, that's funny.
That's what he did. And like I said,
I want to buy this guy. Hey, Doppeljohn, if you're out there anywhere, email us at monsterloretour@gmail.com and monsterloretour@gmail.com. I am going to buy you a beer, sir, because that's fantastic. What way to roll with the punches, that guy,
I hope that someday, I hope the real ending of the story is someday I'm going to look out my window and John Cusack's doppelganger is going to be standing there with a boombox up over his head. And, I'm just going to know right then that it's all okay.
Yeah, playing the theme from The Purge before he comes storming into your house.
No.
Oh, no?
No. Oh, yeah. Well,
or is he still going to be playing Red Rain or In Your Eyes? That's what it was.
Yeah, right? In Your Eyes.
Peter
Gabriel. I'm thinking that version. And I'm hoping, like I said, he was a great a trooper in all of this. And there are police reports that probably match the story somewhere. So let's not.
Yeah, but we don't know the real name. We don't know the location. Nope. We don't know the actual dates or anything. So we did our best to protect the guilty.
Correct.
Actually, we didn't. You're the only guilty one here, as far as we know. So we did just protect the innocent. Maz is the guilty one here.
But I'm doing this totally selfishly.
I mean, what laws were broken? There were no laws broken except social
absurdity law.
You broke the bro laws, dude. You threw a bro under the bus after having beers. That's a no-no, Maz.
Yeah. Sometimes the world is so silly. And I've actually been around a lot of tricksters that you're compelled in a certain situation. Another one really quick to give you an example, because I hung out with a lot of people who had this ability to make an absurd situation worse. And a really quick story is hanging out with my friend. He's the guy who's the Bermuji that he pees in the fountains. He's the one I use as an example.
Yeah.
I'm in one of my first lectures in college ever, and I barely know this guy. I'm just starting to hang out with him. We became best friends late, right around then, probably because of this.
This is part of the reason, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting in the front row with my sharpened pencil, one of my first classes, week 2 of my college career, and we're in the lecture hall with a big podium, and I'm near the front, and all of a sudden you hear rug, 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 clunk. And there is a beer can had rolled down from the top, and it hits the podium.
Full or empty?
It was empty.
Okay.
So it rolled down and it hits the thing. The professor leans over the podium, and a hush falls on the crowd. At that very moment, this is what happens.
No way.
That was the best time when everything's really quiet to open the second one.
That's the best beer opening ever.
But what I'm trying to get at is that's the same spirit of the thing where you're in an absurd situation. What can I do now to just be like,
right.
Well, we're already here, gang.
Right. Bring the moment to its full potential.
Yeah, bring the moment to its full potential. Exactly what you said.
That's a very trickstery way of looking at things.
And for those, as a trickster myself and as somebody who's collected tricksters my whole life, you don't really have it has become a Jungian thing where you don't necessarily have a choice. It comes into your mind what has to happen, and you do it. You act on it.
Right. Well, that's the way I will put that to people is the universe talks to you. You just got to know how to listen.
Yeah.
And at times it tells you you have to do this thing right now.
Yeah.
And I guess for the trickster, it's more things like that. For me, it ends up not being nearly so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that. But telling the guy that looks like John Cusack.
No, I did the psst. No, it was so clear. You had to do psst, and I had to do cupped hand, and he leaned down. He's a big, tall guy.
It's
he leans
the Cusack
down.
guy,
it's
see?
the guy who looks like John Cusack. Man. Yeah,
see?
Yeah, that's what you got to do.
All right, boys, we got him. Round it up.
No, it was
He literally snapped his
two
fingers.
snaps, which is ridiculous. The other cops disappear. He disappears, and I'm like, oh, no.
Do you think that guy calls himself a gumshoe?
Yeah, he's a gumshoe.
He's a gumshoe.
Decades after the gumshoe shouldn't have been there. It was like Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. It was basically, I
there you
envisioned
go.
Steve Martin, But actually, it didn't look. It was a full trench coat, full long hat, full hat, 40s hat. I don't understand why he was
Crazy.
dressed like that. It was just, the whole thing was ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
I do have witnesses, otherwise I would be unsure of whether that actually happened or it was a Ma's hallucination.
Yeah.
But
No, I've heard this from other mouths, so I know this is a real story.
other Maz's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Maz. I appreciate that
Thanks, you
real-life doppelganger story. That's great. If anyone out there has a real-life doppelganger story, anything like that or anything not like that, but still involving an obvious doppelganger, please email us at monsterloretour@gmail.com, and we may read it on the air at some point. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up for this Side Trail edition of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. We will see you actually in just a couple days on Leap Day with our rabbit special. That's going to be fun. But until then, make sure to keep it weird. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this number 14 members only Side Trail of Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast.
Members Only was my favorite leather jacket back in the day.
Ooh, I still have a members only jacket, but don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. It's actually a really nice jacket.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't really tell it's members only. I'm just old enough, Moz.
Okay.
Just old enough.
All right.
And I never throw clothes away.
What tier would be sending them a members only leather jacket? A vintage 80s members only
If
leather
we get
jacket?
to 100 Patreon members, I will burn my members only jacket.
No one wins on
I will
this
put a
one.
video out somewhere.
Except the universe
Hopefully
wins.
we have a
There's
YouTube channel
one
by
last
then.
members only jacket on Earth. No, they did look nice. It was really about the name.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
Because members is also a never mind. But that's why it's even worse. You gotta be a dick to get in here.
Wow. And we went there, everybody. Hi, Mom. Sorry. Okay. So we're going to talk about Tesseracts today, Maz. Tesseracts. I know we have an intelligent listenership, so, a lot of people might be pretty familiar with this, but we're going to deep dive the Tesseract right now. Really get into it. But we're just going to figuratively deep dive into the Tesseract, though, because if we literally did that, it would be like that scene from Interstellar with the books. I don't want to give away too much, and I digress anyway. Let's start at the beginning. This is the standard wiki read for the straight definition of a tesseract, okay? In geometry, a tesseract is the four-dimensional analog of the cube. The tesseract is to the cube as the cube is to the square. Just as the surface of the cube consists of 6 square faces, the hypersurface of the tesseract consists of 8 cubical cells. The tesseract is one of the 6 convex regular 4 polytopes, and a polytope is the generalization of any flat-sided polyhedra to any number of dimensions. So the cube, 4-dimensional, it's the hypercube tesseract. You can take any, like a pyramid, sphere, things
Fit
like
it
that.
within.
Add a dimension to it. That's what they're talking about with the polytopes.
Yeah. And he's trying to explain with his hands like an Italian right now.
I
for
talk
those
with my hands
listening.
so much. It's why we can't do video.
But no, this one I had to look to see what you're getting at. Is this kind of what Johannes Kepler was trying to get at with the planets and trying to tie in the mathematic movements in a different way from Newton? I know that's more of a question for our astrophysicist.
Yeah, I don't have anything
episode.
for you on that one.
So
let me finish the wiki here a little bit more. The tesseract is also called an 8-cell, C8, octocoron, octahedroid, cubic prism, and tetracube. So you have the 8 in there a lot because it is the 8 cubes as opposed to the 6 sides.
right.
It is the 4-dimensional hypercube or 4-cube as a member of the dimensional family of hypercubes or measure polytopes. The term hypercube without a dimension reference is frequently treated as a synonym for this specific polytope. So what that means, like if you had a 9-cell polytope instead of the 8, it's a more sided figure. Or if you had like a 12-sided polytope instead of the 8. But if you just hear hypercube, they're just talking about the 4-dimensional tesseract. That's basically all that's breaking down to. It sounds really complicated. It's really kind of simple once you break it down into that language, So basically 4-dimensional version of the cube. If you want a visual on it, click on the link in the show notes for the wiki, and it has pics for both the folded up and unfolded versions of the tesseract in a 3-dimensional representation on a 2-dimensional picture of a 4-dimensional cube. It's a little weird, but it helps you picture it.
And if that doesn't work, the tramp stamp on the lower back of Jeremy.
It's on my chest.
It's on
dude.
his chest.
It's on my chest.
I get my tattoos confused.
And it's got a tiny little sea turtle in the middle of it because I got it in Hawaii because that's where I experienced the 4th dimension while meditating on the beach.
But
that's a story for a different time.
if you look at the turtle really close, it is a small triangle on one of the shells.
Ooh, it's got a little 3mm triangle etched on the side.
There you go. It's a Betz turtle.
The Betz turtle in the middle of my tesseract. That's interesting. I should get that little triangle.
Yeah, it's the next tattoo.
Little white triangle on the turtle.
Next time you're living on sponge cake.
Oh, boy. What was I saying? Oh, so if you want a visual of this, check out the wiki, like I was saying, for those pictures. I also put a YouTube link in the notes that shows a video of the Tesseract doing a 4-dimensional rotation through 3-dimensional space kind of thing. This one might full on melt your brain if you watch it too long. But if they ever create, speaking of tattoos, if they ever create video tattoos, I'm getting that. Because it's so cool watching that thing spin through itself. I'll show it to you after, Moss.
But you're trying to link it with the tic-tac movement. Is that what you're...
Well, no. It's not like that at all. It's the 4-dimension, like it gives you an actual visual in 3 dimensions of
so it's
what a
trying to get you a little bit
thing
right looks like. Right. But could that be what's happening if you're popping between dimensions with the movement of the jumpiness?
It's sliding in and out kind of thing. Yeah. The way it folds in over itself totally feeds into that whole concept. Yes. Okay. Yes. But a lot of people are probably familiar with the concept of the Tesseract from a lot of contemporary pop culture these days. We'll talk about this bit first so everyone can get a reference. Probably the most notable example of this would be Tony Stark's Tesseract power core for his Iron Man suit.
The new flux capacitor.
Yeah, it's kind of a flux capacitor. It really is. I kind of think the flux capacitor was Tesseract based. It was hyperdimensional object. And we were talking about the vibration and the spin and the acceleration and stuff.
Yeah,
I think it feeds into that. But anywho, back to Marvel and not Back to the Future.
The original.
It's the thing that keeps the shrapnel out of Stark's heart and all that. Right. You know what I mean? It's actually Tesseract. This technology in the MCU lore, of course, was based on the legendary Tesseract of Asgardian lore. Maz is going to read an excerpt from marvelcinematicuniverse.fandom.com/wiki/Tesseract to explain the Asgardian legend of the Tesseract.
The Tesseract, also called the Cube, was a crystalline cube-shaped containment vessel for the Space Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones that predate the universe and possess unlimited energy. It was used by various ancient civilizations before coming into Asgardian hands, kept inside Odin's vault. Eventually it was brought to Earth and left in Tansberg, where it was guarded by devout Asgardian worshippers.
Long story short, the Tesseract went into the ice with Captain America, eventually ended up in the possession of Stark Industries, and the rest, for all you MCU fans out there, is sci-fi history. The thing to know here is that, at least theoretically, there is some actual science behind the unlimited energy concept of Tesseract technology. We'll get back to that shortly. I want to give you a couple more examples here. Another relatively recent sci-fi reference to the hypercube is in the Matthew McConaughey hit Interstellar. I actually had to do homework. I had never seen it, so I had to watch a 3-hour movie in preparation for the Side Trail. That's how dedicated I am.
That's love, yeah.
But I put a YouTube link in the show notes for the specific scene for anyone who wants to check it out. But the gist of the scene, without hopefully giving away too much for anyone who hasn't seen this 10-year-old movie, is that some 5-dimensional creatures create a 3-dimensional representation of a 4-dimensional space and add a dimension of time to this hypercube. So Matthew McConaughey can see an infinite space filled with infinite versions of a specific moment in time. It's a dizzying scene, and it talks about the infinite space within the space.
He's the one who made Sonny and Cher show up during Groundhog Day every morning during that movie. That's what I would do with that power.
Yeah, it is very You could create a Groundhog Day scenario if you learned how to use
No,
this
just
technology.
the Sonny and Cher song. Just that coming on the AM radio like in the morning.
But it talks about the infinite space within the space. And that sentence only makes sense with hypercubes of higher dimension. Another movie usage of the Tesseract, this one's for all you horror fans out there, was in The Cabin in the Woods. To put it real quick and not give away too much again, some people go into what looks like a normal cabin in the woods, but they can't get out as the rooms just seem to keep looping back around on themselves in a never-ending, or should I say, infinite circle. It's a great movie, very scary, much scarier than just that makes it sound, so if you haven't seen it, check it out. But as you may have noticed by now, there is a theme running through these references: unlimited energy, infinite space, never-ending loop. Herein lies, for lack of the better term, the magic of the Tesseract concept. Put as simply as I can think it, when you fold an extra dimension into a lesser dimension, you create an infinite amount of the lesser lesser dimensions space within a finite area of the lesser dimension. For D&D fans, it's like a bag of holding.
Okay.
It's basically what we're talking about. Or another way of putting it, if you fold a finite amount of 4-dimensional space, okay, into a finite amount of 3-dimensional space,
one wins. Yeah.
You create an infinite amount of 3-dimensional space within that 4-dimensional fold.
Okay, I'm gonna need more pot for this one. Okay.
I'm gonna get into it. We're
Okay.
gonna explain this.
Okay.
I need to get the concept. This is the concept entering your brain. I'm sorry if it hurts a little bit, but I am gonna work us through this.
Can
okay.
I ring the bong right now? Bong. It's like calling your friend when you're stuck.
I'm gonna explain how this works. Okay, we're gonna start at the bottom and we're gonna work our way up, and hopefully this makes it make more sense.
I said I did Cologuard.
So we're gonna. That was for the probes, not for the 4th dimension.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we're going to start at dimension 0. Okay, this is a point. Anyone who took, geometry in high school will at least recognize this concept.
Right.
A point has no length, no width, no height, and it takes up what we would consider 0 space. Okay?
Yeah.
So you're with me there.
Yep.
Now to add a dimension, we place the tip of our imaginary pencil on the dot and we draw a straight line. Say we make it an inch long, okay? Inch long line.
If we can make it longer by choice.
Right. But, we can only work with what God gives us. So in our terms, we would say there is 1 inch of 1-dimensional space being taken up by that line, right? Because it only has length. No width, no height.
Mm-hmm.
Just length. But what about the terms of the original 0-dimension points perspective? It is a 0-dimension thing now connected to a 1-dimensional object. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If it tries to perceive that 1-dimensional object, it will see it as 1 0 point of 0-dimensional space at a time.
Infinite little dots between the lines.
Now riddle me this, Maz. How many points of 0-dimensional space are in a 1-inch line of 1-dimensional space?
According to Zeno, infinite.
Infinite. Very good. See what we just did there?
No.
We just attached.
Yeah, an infinite amount of
0 to
possibilities
1.
And made an infinite amount of possibilities.
Attaching 0 to 1
Yeah.
makes infinite zeros.
Right.
Right? Now let's add another dimension. We have a 1-inch, 1-dimensional line. To add a dimension, we add 3 more 1-inch lines to form a square. A 2-dimensional area of 1 square inch. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now here's your next question. How many of those 1-dimensional 1-inch lines can we fit inside a 1 square inch of 2-dimensional space?
Infinite and every infinite point within every infinite.
Exactly, infinite. The culprit here, if you're wondering what's going on,
Is reality.
is 0.
Mm-hmm. 0.
Exactly. You are definitely the problem here.
About time we figured that out. It took 14 episodes.
The culprit in the equations here is the 0.
Yeah.
The dot to the line ratio is 0 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
In order to figure out how many points in the line, you would divide 1 by 0. And of course, anything you divide by 0 is infinity.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with the line to the box. The 2-dimensional area of the square is 1 times 1 equals 1. The 2-dimensional area of the line is 1 times 0, which equals 0, having no second dimension by which to multiply. So the equation of how many lines are in the box is 1 divided by 0, which equals
infinity.
Because anything you divide by 0 is infinity.
But it's almost exponential infinity, which makes no sense.
It's hard to find the sense in our 3-dimensional brains of this, but this happens at every level when you add the next dimension. Okay? Are you with me a little better now?
I'm trying. I'm really. I should have read my homework notes.
So here's your last quiz. if we divide a finite amount of 3-dimensional space into a finite amount of 4-dimensional space, how much 3-dimensional space do we have?
It's still infinite.
It's still infinite because we add that 0, we multiply by a 0 for the 4th dimension, which gives us a 0, which we then divide by.
See, the show notes could be better if you just told me just answer everything infinite for that bit. I had to think about it to get to the same answer.
I'm glad you said it before I gave it to you.
Yeah.
Because that means you're at least grasping the concept. It's. I'm not asking you to completely understand because I'm not sure anyone really completely but just grasp the concept. Okay. That's what I'm looking for.
There.
If you're still confused, I put a link in the show notes for a really good YouTube video breakdown of this stuff that gives you good visualizations of what we're talking about and all the different dimensions and whatnot. I watched it a couple of times in preparation for this, and it definitely helped me picture it and understand it better. So,
because you can't see your own back. Oh, no, it's on your chest, so you can see it.
Yeah. Oh, the Tesseract, my tattoo. Yeah, it's on my chest.
I know.
When I look in the mirror, I can see it. Anywho, to remind everyone what got us on this subject, I referenced the Tesseract in connection to one of the videos we commented on, the Connected episode, of course. It was one of the videos taken by the commercial airline pilot, and this will be the next link in the show notes. I'll put it here too in case anybody wants to be able to click on it real easy. Now, this craft doesn't match the flat-sided nature of the folded Tesseract exactly. It has kind of a spare tire belly around the middle. But stay with me here, and it'll fill you in on what I'm thinking. The Tesseract also came up in a discussion in the previous UAP saga in episode 6 in reference to the sighting of the black cube inside the gray sphere, like we talked about in this episode for a minute. This was the incident with Navy pilot Ryan Graves, who testified alongside Commander Fravor at the House hearing we discussed in Side Trail 7, actually. Yep. And I do want to give a little bit of a memory refresher here. So let's have Maz read us a bit about the incident as we discussed it in episode 6.
Oh, I'm disgusted. On a clear, sunny day in April 2014, 2 FA-18s took off for an air combat training mission off the coast of Virginia. The jets, part of my Navy fighter squadron, climbed to an altitude of 12,000 and steered towards warning area W72, an exclusive block of airspace 10 miles east of Virginia Beach. All traffic into the training area goes through a single GPS point at a set altitude, almost like a doorway into a massive room where military jets can operate without running into other aircraft. Just as the moment of the 2 jets crossed the threshold, one of the pilots saw a dark gray cube inside of a clear sphere, motionless against the wind, fixed directly at the entry point. The jets, only 100 feet apart, zipped past the object on either side. The pilots had come so dangerously close to something they couldn't identify that they terminated the training mission immediately and returned to base. I almost hit one of those damn things, the flight leader, Ryan Graves, still shaken by the incident, told us shortly after in the pilot's ready room. We all knew exactly what he meant. Those damn things had been plaguing us for the previous 8 months. ...
So let's tie this all together, all right? You ready? We have talked at length in previous episodes about the concept of field propulsion. Mm-hmm. What if these witnessed craft, the apparent cube inside the sphere, and this other cubic-looking craft with the rounded bulge around the middle, are actually hypercubes folded into our 3-dimensional space, being propelled by these fields, thus presenting to our perceptions as a cube inside some sort of bubble?
Well, they said that's exactly what he thought he saw.
Right. It would actually mesh with a lot of prominent theories about what these UAPs are.
And I'm sorry to ask this question, but is this related to the video that we saw that kind of looked like something within something else? Because that kind of tied in.
Yeah, because it had that look of something like a structure inside a separate bubble.
Yeah. And that's what he's saying, but I'm just wondering if it's the same thing, because it almost sounds what he's describing.
Right. Because what I'm talking about is the theory that these UAPs are not interplanetary or intergalactic.
Interdimensional. Yeah.
But are transdimensional craft of some kind that are coming to us not from another point in our own space-time,
right,
but from an overlying, completely separate, higher dimensional space-time.
Right.
So in other words, what if Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey was actually onto something? What if what we are seeing is a three-dimensional rendering of a four-dimensional hypercube utilizing field drive propulsion to move itself through our dimension?
It's a good theory. I mean, obviously the interdimensional part is not new, but what we're seeing in these videos and what people are saying seem to be describing the Tesseract.
Right.
Something Tesseract-ish.
And if it is that sort of thing, it can just flip itself through our space kind of on a whim and pop around like the Tic Tac was doing.
Right.
Dropping 80,000 feet in a few seconds kind of thing on the radar.
And disappearing.
Right.
They
just
can jump
bang,
between
6 miles over there. Like,
yeah.
You know what, 72,000 miles an hour was the slowest it was going, if I remember right,
the
from those previous episodes. Yeah. And some people said it was instantaneous.
That was the post-Sammy Hagar.
Right. I bet he can drive 72,000 miles an hour.
He'd be very happy with that. He wouldn't have to write that song. That song would have never been written.
See, again, this is why we need a time machine.
Yeah.
But so that's basically my breakdown on the Tesseract. Does my theory hold any water?
Yeah, I just said I think between the video we watched and the gentleman's last comments on what he was seeing, we're describing something that matches a very strange enfolding of different dimensionality of different, take the school of Pythagoras and shove it into a black hole kind of thing.
There you go. See, I got Moz on board with my theory. All you members in the Patreon, please leave us some comments, let you know what you think about that theory yourself.
And also realize I never agree with them very often, so that's a rare.
It's hard for me to get Moz on board with these more complex scientific things.
Oh,
sometimes.
Yeah, we're getting too complex for Moz.
Well, no, it's just, it's not the complex part, it's more the scientific. You like the mythos, you like the history of things and whatnot, the stuff that goes way back, and I'm talking about new stuff. Mm-hmm. That we don't even know what the hell we're looking at yet. You know what I mean? But when I get this science-y on you,
no, I enjoy
to
it.
Pull you in.
I struggle sometimes.
When I can pull you in, that's good.
I enjoy it.
But I just hope everybody understands the concept of this hyperdimensionality a little better, and the whole concept of being able to create the infinite space within the lower dimension. And if not, read Flatland. You ever read Flatland? It's an old book, but it's totally worth.
I went Tom Friedman, The World is Flat, so no, I read that.
Well, no, it's about a two-dimensional creature that makes contact with the third dimension.
Sounds very outer limitsy.
It's very interesting.
Nice.
It's old school. It's got a very old style to it. Mm. I want to say it was early 1900s. I could be totally off on that, but I know it's kind of old.
The 50s was a big time.
It's a good place to start. If you want to start getting into the concept of hyperdimensionality and what different dimensions look like to other dimensions, it really gives a good starting point. It's part of the reason why I'm so into it and why I kind of mentally grasp it so well is that book got me started down that road.
Is it? I don't want to make you mad by being really dumb or being really smart. But I know you were talking about Black Stick Men and you wanted to do something on that. Does that have anything to do with where we're going?
I'm giving a bit away, but it is members only here. It's a side trail. But yes, when I'm doing one, I believe it's going to be called Cryptoid Palooza. Mm-hmm. It's going to be Black Stick Men, Glimmer Man, things like that. But it's going to tie into this whole hyperdimensional concept. Yes.
I deserve a bonus for that.
Yes, they're absolutely going to tie into that.
Wow.
But all right, anything else you want to put in here before we go, Moss?
Well, I don't. I think that I followed it, and I think that you made a case for it, and I think it's one of those things that now that you start to look out for it, we might see more with these. What if we could go back and look through these dumps and try to find more that relates to a Tesseracts style thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But wasn't Tesseract? Now I think about it, though, I think you missed one of those references. Wasn't that also the planet in Dune?
Tesseract?
Yeah.
I'd have to look into
it's
that.
Arrakis, I think.
Arrakis.
I'm just messing with you a little bit. I was hoping you'd get it.
That new Dune movie's coming out soon.
Yeah.
I think it's in the spring.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Oh, I know. Those are, this is the second one.
Second one.
We went to see it on IMAX, Jess and I, and it was actually way too loud. And
yeah, IMAX is too overdone.
IMAX is dumb.
Too overdone.
And it's
Go
sad.
to the Cine one or like the ones more regular movie theater, but with the cushy recliner seats and stuff. That's the way to see a movie these days, honestly. IMAX is too much. They make it so loud and so bassy that, it's hard to
My
hear
old
it.
17-inch RCA in the basement, black and white. That's the way to do. Kids don't know what you're missing today.
Yeah, I remember being the remote control.
I'm getting a new tube. I'm going to get a new tube flown in. And
Gen X remembers when there weren't remote controls because we were the remote control.
Yeah. But you never had to change
If
the batteries.
If you're too young to know what we're talking about, ask your parents. They'll tell you. But let's get out of here.
Dark days.
We have gone far enough off the rails, and I have no more to say about the fourth dimension at the moment. So thank you once again to all you patrons in the Patreon. Your support is always much appreciated, and we can never thank you enough for sponsoring the Monster Lore Tour. We love being here. We hope you do too. Make sure to check back in with us again next week for your next adventure with the Monster Lore Tour. Until then, stay weird. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this 30th Side Trail for the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host and the other half of my brain, Mr. Matt Ozero, a.k.a. the Moz. Good to see you again, Moz.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah, it's been
20-minute smoke break.
I think you were out of my sight for about 30 seconds during the break.
Yeah.
But I miss you when you're gone.
Aw.
Real quick before we get into it, thanks to all our members who get to listen to this side trail immediately after the episode hits early release in the members section at patreon.com/monsterloretour. We greatly appreciate your support. If you enjoy the Monster Lore Tour, you can join our Patreon for only $1 a month at patreon.com/monsterloretour, where you will get early access to episodes and their connected side trails. Our production schedule fluctuates a bit because, life, but we try to stay about a month ahead of public release in our members area. If you want to stay ahead of the crowd with Monster Lore Tour, come on along, sign up at patreon.com/monsterloretour. It's only $1. We'll love you forever for it. Yes, we are that cheap. We'd make great politicians, wouldn't we, Moss?
Well, I'm thinking the next one, we pay them $1 to be a Patreon member.
Hey, if I had the budget, I would.
Yeah.
If we had the budget. But we need them to give us the
Great
money.
business model.
See, we need them to give us the money so that we can then give them the money. You got to move the money around. That's how the economy works.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, the real thing is once we get enough Patreon members, if we're getting enough a month, we'll start actually doing some merch. I really want to get those coffee mugs going, but we need at least a little bit of a budget first. And right now we're all hopes and dreams, man. Hopes and dreams.
I drink out of the prototype every morning.
Yeah, there you go. We each have one. They're the only two in existence, but they're cool. Yep. The coffee mug worked. It was cool. But anywho, before we get ourselves in trouble here, let's get into our side trail number 30. For this excursion, we will be discussing the development of human measuring systems. We start with a simple pendulum.
And a pit.
No pit, just a pendulum.
Okay.
Well, maybe a gravity well.
Yeah.
Anywho.
That's the pit? No, the gravity well and the pendulum.
The gravity well and the pendulum.
That should have been what he called it.
But a simple pendulum, yes, simple. But also one of the most versatile and important instruments in the history of human mathematics, and seemingly a base of human measuring systems from the very beginning. A pendulum seems little more than a weight on a string, because that's what it is a weight on a string. But when hanging at rest, this weight on a string will give you a perfectly vertical line, known as a plumb line. Plumb lines have been used in the building process since humans have been building things, giving the builders a literal guideline for keeping their lines in true. This method would have been used all the way back when people were building Göbekli Tepe, the pyramids, Stonehenge, and the practice is still common today. The plumb line was most likely the first measuring tool created by humans and still stands as one of the more useful tools we have in our arsenal. You didn't know a pendulum did so much, did you?
Yeah.
And it's not even swinging yet.
Yeah. Wait
This
till
is
it
a
starts
pendulum that's
swinging.
not even swinging yet.
No.
But when you set the plumb line to swinging, it becomes a pendulum, see? And its mathematical implications come to light. There are two forces that act on a pendulum swing. Those are gravity and the length of the pendulum string. It's just gravity and the length of the string. These are the factors that dictate the arc time of the pendulum as it swings. That is to say, the time it takes for the pendulum to complete one swing from one endpoint to the other. Okay? Now you might be thinking, if I lift the weight higher and let it swing a longer arc, then the arc time will be longer than a shorter arc, right?
No.
Correct. Actually, here's the first thing you need to know about the pendulum as it relates to the development of ancient measuring systems. The length of the pendulum's arc does not affect its arc time. The arc time is determined by the length of the string and gravity alone.
Mm-hmm.
This is key. That's why I keep repeating. I'm driving it into your head here. When you have a pendulum with a, say, 2-inch string, whether you lift the weight to 45 degrees, 90 degrees, or 120 degrees from true, the arc length will change, but the arc time will always remain the same, with the pendulum swinging faster from the higher end point and slower from the lower end point.
So it balances out.
Balances out. The arc time will always remain the same based solely on the length of the string. This makes pendulums very basic but very accurate timekeepers. In fact, the pendulum was the primary timekeeper for all of humanity. Maz, would you please read us this passage from the pendulum's Wikipedia page, please?
The regular motion of pendulums was used for timekeeping and was the world's most accurate timekeeping technology until the 1930s. The pendulum clock, invented by Christian Huygens in 1656, became the world standard timekeeper, used in homes and offices for 270 years, and achieved accuracy of about 1 second per year before it was superseded as a time standard by the quartz clock in the 1930s.
So there you go. And what they mean by 1 second per year is if you kept your clock by it over the course of a whole year, you would only lose a second. It would only be off by a second. So it was extremely accurate. But there you go. From the very beginning of human building up to not even 100 years ago, the pendulum was the most accurate timekeeping device known to man.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Just a weight on a string. I mean, it's crazy, right? But this isn't the only power of measurement inherent in the pendulum. Due to its nature of the constant of gravity and the variable of string length being its only influencers, you can also utilize the pendulum to create measuring systems for space as well as time. This is achieved by combining the measure of the arc time of the pendulum with the movement of the Earth, or more accurately from our perspective, the movement of other celestial objects through our sky. There are two known ancient measuring systems that were apparently pendulum-based. These are the megalithic yard, which we find used throughout the so-called prehistoric megalithic period, and the Sumerian Kush, which is a direct forerunner of some modern measuring systems. They both used pendulums in the movement of specific celestial objects through the sky to establish their standards of measurement, with the notable differences being that the megalithic system measured 366 degrees in a circle, whereas the Sumerians measured 360 degrees in a circle, as we do still today. as an aside, I did mention how it seemed like ancient people might have known the size of the moon.
Yeah, you did.
Originally, we considered a circle to have 366 degrees. The Earth is 3.66 times bigger than the moon. Just saying.
Wow, another weird coinky dink.
There's a lot of that in that book, in Who Built the Moon by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. There's a lot of stuff like that I didn't even really get into here because it's like a whole nother road to go down.
So the moon is Sumerian, right? Is that what that means?
Well, no,
the megalithic one is
the megalithic
366.
predated. Yeah. So the Sumerians actually changed it to 360 degrees, right. Which is, and it's been that way ever since.
So we've come full circle.
Ah, well done. But how does it all work? You might be asking. As they are very similar processes, we'll use the Sumerian Kush for our example, as it is more closely related to our current systems of measurement, specifically the meter. We're going to do the meter and the foot today, is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do both of the standards.
This is like when you pat your head and rub your belly at the same time.
Correct.
You can do metric and our ridiculous system.
Correct. Meter is the head and foot is the belly.
Gotcha.
I just did it again.
Don't stop.
To show. Okay. All right. Anywho, but the process of achieving the measuring units is the same, the megalithic yard and the Kush. So
right.
We're covering both at the same time. We're just going to focus on the Kush. To build our measurement unit creating device, we must follow the following process. This is taken from Appendix 1 of Who Built the Moon by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. Could you please read us this 5-step process, Moz?
1. Stand in an unobstructed position on a wide open piece of ground with a good view of the western horizon. 2. Place a stick in the ground, stick A, and stand facing west with one of your heels touching the stick. Is this like IKEA? 3.
Yeah.
Now take 233 steps, heel to toe, towards the west. Upon completing the 233 steps, place a second stick in the ground, stick B, in front of your toe. 4. Turn to the north. It's also like an REM song.
Yeah.
Turn to the
now stand.
Turn to the north and place your heel against stick B. Now take 4 heel-to-toe steps to the north and then place a third stick in the ground, stick C, in front of your toe. 5. The distance between sticks B and C when viewed from A will now be 1/360th of the horizon.
You see what we did there?
Yeah.
That is 1 degree of the horizon.
Difference. Yeah.
1 degree of the Earth's circumference.
Right.
Is what that would equate to at that point.
Yep.
That doesn't sound very scientific steps to measure stuff, but it is actually amazing how entwined some of our measuring systems, particularly the 5,280-foot mile, are connected to the length of human steps and or strides. The pendulum technique, and particularly the Sumerian Kush, was a direct precursor to the modern meter. So that is what we're focusing on for the moment. We'll get into the mile in the next section. That's part 2 of this side trail.
Yeah, similarly, they figured out the circumference of the Earth with steps between 2 monoliths, basically.
There's a lot that makes you think they knew the size of things. Very much so. Yeah. Now back to our Kush creator. So we have our sticks A, B, and C in their proper positions. Next, we need to build a rectangular frame to sit on top of sticks B and C, essentially creating a viewing box across the tops of B and C, the same width as the gap between them that you can see through from stick A. Okay, that makes sense? To put this device to use, Venus must, quote, be observable as an evening star setting after the sun and during the period at which it is moving at its fastest, counter to the backdrop of the stars, unquote. At this point, your viewing box across the top of sticks B and C, when properly angled, will track Venus through 1 arc length or degree of the horizon, or portion of the circumference of the Earth, as we were saying, 1/360th of the full circle. The passage of Venus through 1 degree of the Earth's circumference takes almost exactly, we'll get back to that in a minute, 4 minutes. or 240 seconds. If you built your viewer properly, this gives one with a pendulum the ability to calculate a 1-second arc time for their pendulum, which will be determined by the length of the string on which the pendulum weight is hung. When your pendulum swings exactly 240 times during Venus's passage through your viewing box, you now have a pendulum with a recorded arc time of 1 second.
Got it.
Got it? You with me? Okay. Now let's translate that time measuring element into a distance measuring element. You ready, Moz? The length of the pendulum string for a pendulum with a 1 second arc time, as measured by this passage of Venus, became known as the Sumerian double kush, with 1/2 of that string equaling a kush. The double kush, measured in today's metric system, is equal to 99.88 centimeters. Almost exactly what we call a meter.
Dang. Is the double kush a hazy or more of a New England style?
It's the sticky icky, man.
Dang. So
now,
that's how we get a meter. That's how we came up with a meter.
This is the root of the meter. Absolutely. Now back to that almost exactly I dropped on you a few swings of the pendulum ago. When tracking Venus with this method, or any celestial body, there will be a very slight variation of the timing due to the body being a free-moving object outside the Earth's influences. So using Venus as your clock to figure the proper length of your string for making 240 swings during the passage will actually equate to each swing equaling 1.002 seconds. Really, really, really super almost accurate, but just a tiny little nudge off true. This is essentially the only reason the double kush is a bit off from the modern meter. Just note that this slight variation doesn't mean the pendulum arc time is off. That isn't something that happens due to the inherent nature of the pendulum, but because of the slight variations in the movement of Venus. It's important to remember that the pendulum, like Maz, is always right.
Wow, I like that.
You like that? I even wrote that in the notes. You can see it.
Nice.
But the calculable variations in Venus's movement accounts for the minor variations of the double kush from the meter, which according to Wikipedia, quote, the definition of the length of the meter in the 1790s was founded upon arc measurements in France and Peru, with a definition that it was to be 1/40 millionth of the circumference of the Earth measured through the poles. So they took a different approach, but it's the same.
Coming to the same conclusion.
And do you know why?
Because you're coming from...
Because it's all based on the size of the Earth.
It's also,
These are all based on how big around is the Earth.
Right.
That's what we based all this on.
Yep.
So going all the way back to the megalithic period, people knew how big the Earth was.
Oh, they had to lay those things out.
Like that's what this is telling us.
Yeah.
Okay, so they used different methods, but they based it on the same thing, so they came to basically the same conclusion. Except the guys in the 1790s made some errors of their own in the development of the meter. So much like the kush, the meter is actually very slightly out of true. They're both a little bit wrong. They are basically the same measuring system developed twice with two different methods in two greatly separated time periods, attaining the same result, each measuring according to the circumference of the Earth, and each almost nailing it, but just slightly off. It's almost like people are people no matter where you go, huh, Moz?
Same figuring, same stuff out.
They just repeated the same experiment and got the same result.
Reinventing the
total
wheel,
different cultures.
Literally.
Yeah, exactly. The meter is totally the reinvention of a wheel. But it does seem like
with 360 spokes.
Does seem like a crazy coincidence there.
Yeah. I'm not in disagreement.
But okay, well, now let's ponder. We're done pondering the pendulum for the moment. Let's get into the roots of the mile. We're going to do the other one now. For us U.S. people, we're going to do the other system now. It all starts with one step, Moz.
Mankind.
Or I should say 2 steps, actually, that equal a pace. Let me explain. In what we now call ancient Britain, the standard measuring system was based on the length of a person's stride. The official measure was called a pace, equivalent to 2 steps, and the act of measuring was called pacing. Makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
To practice this practice, choose 2 objects, put your heel against one, and then walk to the other until your toe touches. Lead with your left foot, and for every time your right foot comes forward, so every second step, count 1 pace. That will give you the distance in paces. Okay?
All right. So I was doing it wrong during that quick draw in down Tombstone.
Right. The official measure of a pace, which I assume was based on the average stride of a grown human of the time, was 5.28 feet. Now let me ask you, Moz, how many feet in a mile?
No idea.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know.
5,280 feet in a mile.
There you go.
How long is a pace? 5.28 feet.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. 5,280 feet in a mile. Now, that's exactly 1,000 paces per mile.
Wow.
You see that?
Wow.
You're an aspiring etymologist, Moz. With the number 1,000 in your brain, look at the word mile and tell me where you think it came from. Take the E off.
A million?
A mil. But what is a mil in the Greek? What like they use in the metric system? A millimeter.
Millimeter. Yeah.
Millimeter is 1,000th of a meter, right?
Yep.
That is where the word mile comes from, because it's a derivative of 1,000. It's 1,000 paces.
That is crazy. I mean, it's still, that one's still an arbitrary.
Not really. That's where that word comes from.
But I'm just saying the 528 and the 528 is still arbitrary length.
It is based on human anatomy.
Correct. The foot. So yeah, that one.
And the ratio is going to come back later as we go, because the foot is, there are 5.28 feet in a pace.
Right. So all that.
So one pace equals 5.28 feet. We're going to get really deep into that ratio here in a minute. So what we're seeing is 1,000 paces per mile. So it is a very metric system-like number. But the mile, much like the kilometer, is based on its base unit of measurement times 1,000, Except the mile uses the pace and the kilometer uses the double couche. Or excuse me, I mean meter, of course, which is based on the pendulum. Same thing, really, though, right? Because they're just measuring 1 degree of the circumference of the Earth,
right,
relative to the system that they're building.
Yeah.
Okay. But this mile of 1,000 paces is truly ancient, going back to the megalithic times when the forgotten builders of the great megalithic structures were doing their work. This being a system originating in ancient Britain, let's go back to the source and look at the measurements of Stonehenge. Okay? The outer ring of Stonehenge consists of 30 standing sarsen stones. Those are the ones that act as the pillars. In a ring with a diameter of 105.6 feet. Okay? These sarsen stones were topped with lintel stones, the ones lying across the gaps at the top. There were also 30 lintel stones, each measuring 10.56 feet long, exactly 1/10 the length of the diameter of the circle they formed. Okay? Very good math going on here. Now let's think back to the Sumerian couche for a moment. They found the length of the string for a 1-second pendulum and used it as the base of their measuring system, creating a symbiosis between their perceptions of time and space. But the length of that string was called a double couche, with the base unit of 1 couche equaling half the length of that string, right? Now let's take these Stonehenge measurements. The lintel stones are exactly 10.56 feet long. So what is half of 10.56 miles?
5.23, which is back
5.28.
Oh, that was close.
Yeah. It's that same number. It's a pace. That means that each of those lintel stones measures exactly 2 paces. Now look at the diameter again. 105.6 feet. And you see the correlation there. Exactly 10 times the length of the lintel stones, equaling exactly 20 paces. Okay? This shows not only that the builders of Stonehenge were using a consistent measuring system, but that the measuring system they used is the same one that us Americans are still using today, except with there being 30 stones, 20 paces to the diameter, and the lintels being 1/10 the diameter, and the mile itself being 1,000 paces. It seems they used a certain base 10 application of their 5.28 ratio-based system. Okay? This is the 5.28 feet to a pace ratio. It turns out this ratio is much more meaningful than it may at first seem. Maybe not quite so arbitrary. You ready? To explain what I mean, we're going to have to look at the furlong. This is not a very popular standard of measure at this point. You don't see it much outside of horse racing and real estate, but it is an integral part of this whole 5.28 ratio system of the pace to the foot and the foot to the mile. The furlong is defined as 660 feet in length, which is 125 paces. This is a useful measurement in real estate when dividing things into acres. An acre is 43,560 square feet. Okay? If you create a plot that is 660 feet by 660 feet, that is 1 furlong by 1 furlong, you get a plot of exactly 10 acres. And if you divide 43,560 square feet by 660 feet, you get 66 feet. So an acre is 1 furlong by 1/10 of a furlong. If, say, you're going to make some kind of easement or something, you know
Right.
what I mean? But there is a much deeper meaning behind the furlong. And here at Monster Lore Tour, we always reach into the deepest depths. So let's see where the furlong can take us here, Moz. Let's start with the size of the Earth, because that's where everybody else started too, right? If the Earth were a perfect sphere, instead of the oblongated spheroid that it is now, but with the same mass. So if we evened it all out, if we made it an actual geometrical object, its diameter would be 7,920 miles. Okay? Remember that, 7,920 miles. Now, how many inches are in a furlong? Multiply the 660 feet furlong by 12 to convert it to inches, and we get 7,920 inches.
All right.
Okay? 7,920 miles in the Earth's diameter. 7,920 inches in a furlong. This means that the ratio of the furlong to the inch is the same as the ratio of the Earth to a mile. And how many inches in a mile, Moz?
You going to do this to me? 12 times 5, 60,000.
Oh, you're really close. That's a great estimate. 63,360.
All right, nice.
63,360 inches in 1 mile.
Times it by 12, you know.
Now let's apply that ratio. Hold on. Now let's apply that ratio and divide by that 5.28, because that's the ratio it's all based on, and we get 12,000. And if you multiply that 12,000 by 660 feet in a furlong, you get 7,920,000 feet, or 1,000 times the diameter of the Earth in miles.
Dang.
And there's that 1,000
So
again.
acreage leading to circumference. Furlong all along.
Mm-hmm. So it's based on the size of the Earth.
Yeah.
It's all based on the size of the Earth. They used the pace and then created the furlong to measure the Earth. So it's why we still break up land that way.
Right.
10 acres is 1 furlong by 1 furlong. And that's like, if you're a farmer, you buy 10 acres, the lots are always by 10 acres, 40 acres. It's always a multiple of 10.
Right.
That's the furlong.
That's awesome.
For every 10 acres, it's 1 furlong per side.
So it's less arbitrary than I thought.
It's far less arbitrary than you were thinking.
Yep.
So following these ratios to the equation of 12,000 furlongs is 1,000 times the diameter of the Earth, and knowing that the ratio of a pace to a foot is the same as a furlong to the Earth, and the Earth is to the mile as the furlong is to the inch, we can divide that 12,000 furlongs by that 1,000 Earths and figure out that there have to be 12 inches in a foot. Thank you very much. I rest my case, ladies and gentlemen.
Backwards. He worked backwards.
You see what happened right there?
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
There's 12 inches in a foot because the Earth's diameter is 7,920 feet.
Yeah.
Or miles.
So anatomy is impacted. That makes no sense.
Our measuring systems are a combination of human anatomy and the size of the Earth.
It's very Da Vincian.
Very well put. Yes, very Da Vincian.
Yeah. Makes no sense to me, but okay.
I just hurt my brain. And that's how we got our standard measuring system. That's where it comes from. This means that our ancient standard measuring system is based upon the ratio of the human anatomy to the size of the Earth.
Wow. So when you're
in a real direct way, that was real math I just did.
When you are kicking someone's ass, it's very, very, measurement-y based.
the arc time of your kick,
and the length of your leg
is based on the size of the Earth. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Whew. Thank you and good night, everybody. I don't know how I'm going to outdo that one, man. Actually, no, just kidding. I owe you that theory I was talking about. Did I say that? I have a theory on why we are maintaining this system. I might have skipped over that, actually, but I have a theory at the end here. The whole world is trying to push us out of this old standard. Everybody uses metric, right? And we're here in the U.S. using the old furlong system.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are societies, potentially, this is a theory, okay? But we always got to end with our theory section here at Monster Lore Tour. So this is kind of my theory that came out of developing this whole side trail. I think that there are societies like the Freemasons or some such thing that are purposefully keeping this measurement system alive in the modern world when almost everyone has switched to the meter. This standard system may actually be the most ancient and inherent system of measurement used by humankind. For what more inherent way to measure distance than by counting your strides? No tools necessary. You don't even need the weight on the string. Mm-hmm. And just a basic concept of arithmetic is all you need. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make a little notch for every step you take. What do you think, Maz? Are we fighting the good fight by keeping this most ancient of measuring systems alive here in the U.S.?
I thought the metric made much more sense mathematically, but now we find Skull and Bones of maybe the ones who stopped us from learning the metric system.
And honestly, if you really want to get persnickety about it, the foot and the furlong and all that stuff we just broke down right there is actually more accurate than the couche and the meter, because they were a little off.
Yeah.
We used ourselves instead of this, or I shouldn't say we weren't that, but the standard system as opposed to the metric system. The standard system used the human body itself, which is under the influence of Earth. The reason the meter and the couche were a little bit off is because they were trying to use something that is not under the influence of the Earth, Venus, to get their base measurement. That gave them a little bit, it was really close to right, like really, really close, but it was a little bit off. When you use the human step as your base of measurement,
you're close.
It's more accurate. Yeah. The human anatomy determines our measurement. Like how many steps does it take to get around the Earth is basically what our measurement system is based on.
Right. So we didn't learn the metric system because we couldn't figure it out, and our dumbness was actually super smartness.
I don't think it wasn't because we couldn't figure it out. I think it's because they didn't want to let go of this system, which might be which could be just the fear of change. Americans are great at fear of change.
Yeah.
But I mean, who isn't really?
But it turns out to be the better measuring system. It's interesting that we failed.
Right. Like and you know, the whole, I mean, I'm sure do episodes on this later, but the whole Freemasons in America thing.
Yeah.
I honestly came to start thinking that, did the Masons make sure we did not switch to the metric system?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. I just said Skull and Bones.
Right. You're using the other society.
Yeah.
I just think the Masons, because they're the builders.
Yeah, no, I get it. They're,
And this is a very builder, sort of concept at work. But all right, I'm going to get out of here. My brain's tired. Real stuff there, people. I hope everybody enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed putting it together. But anything else to add or subvert before we go, Moss?
Nope. Looking forward to the next round.
All right, cool. Thanks for coming. Again, thanks to the members who get to listen to this in our member section at patreon.com/monsterlore tour, where you can join for just $1 a month. Get all the early release stuff. This will be out right along with the Hollow Moon episode there. Otherwise, you got to wait for the compilation to come out.
We send them $1. Got it.
But that wraps it up for this Side Trail number 30. We will see you next Tuesday. Till then, keep it weird. Monster Lore Tour Podcast.
Well said, sir. That was better than anything you said in that Side Trail.